Connectivity is a spaghetti bowl of interlinked commercial, social and environmental ecosystems that defy centralised control or the protection of one state, individual state, or an individual's interests. The full benefits of connectivity can only be enjoyed when connections are nurtured through enabling policy and through multidimensional frameworks that are designed not to control or extract, but to facilitate and empower. In framing the EU's connectivity experience, I appreciate the way Veronica framed the EU as an organic entity, an entity born from shared recognition that member states enjoy a mutually symbiotic relationship in which everyone benefits. That followed on from remarks by Kulchandra Gautam, who gave insightful historical context, noting the impacts of colonialism and that it had resulted in a far less connected South Asia region. This is borne out by some statistics that were raised about the stagnation of intra-regional trade. Sits between 5 and 7%, which when you compare to ASEAN trade arrangements, 25%, NAFTA, 50% intra-trade, and the EU, 62%. So that says that we've got a fair way to go, and South Asia can't alter its history, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be constrained by it. There are obviously obstacles to interregional connectivity, which makes it imperative for states to loosen unproductive policy controls that inhibit interregional trade and investment. This is important to improve competitiveness and productivity, to generate more and better paying jobs, to enable access to new ideas and technology, and supplement pools of domestic savings and lower prices for consumers. But loosening the policy reins should not be at the expense of environmental conservation, cultural preservation, or sustainable investment outcomes. But it will involve difficult political decisions. I mean, Australia itself in the 70s and 80s went through that transition economic reform, but it has culminated in 27 years of uninterrupted growth. Foremost amongst the challenges for the region is to effectively advocate the win-win opportunities of reforms in environments where vested interests are often focused on protecting their pieces of the pie, when the conversation should be about how do we work together to increase the size of the pie and everyone's share of it. Now, integral to this is the role and contribution of women as consumers, as investors, as policymakers, and it brings us back to the ICIMOD graphic. It's to our mutual detriment that the barriers for women is less recognised than the infrastructure investment requirements. However, it's imperative we ensure that women, as well as men, have the opportunity to benefit from new market openings and trade opportunities that new infrastructure creates. Gender-based inequality in business and trade has an overall dampening effect on productivity and growth, with significant costs to regional economies. Gender inequality can and does impact on a country's competitiveness and capacity to increase business opportunities. As Elena said earlier this morning, gender equity is not a purely social issue, it's smart economics. It enhances economic efficiency and improves sustainable development outcomes. It's estimated that limits on women's participation in the workforce across the Asia-Pacific region cost the regional economies overall $80 billion a year. And in South Asia, the level of women's exclusion from the workforce is particularly high, where women currently comprise 49% of the population, only 35% of the or 36% of the workforce. This, coupled with the fact that the majority of vulnerable workers in South Asia, more than 80%, are women, means that we have a long way to go, but together we can work collaboratively with the private sector to overcome these challenges. So Australia is very much focused on that aid for trade, which is designed to assist the private sector and governments to build capacity, to participate in and benefit from trade. This now represents 20% of our overall aid budget, or about 800 million Australian dollars. Within this is support to integrate gender responsiveness in major infrastructure projects, trade facilitation and logistics that encourage women and men to benefit from trade. On this point, we must recognise the vital role that the private sector plays in both the infrastructure and the gender equality space. Leading firms in South Asia and an increasing number of multinationals are proactively including gender-responsive policies in their central workplaces and along their entire supply chains. Why? Because it is simply good business. To draw on the perspectives of women, to deliver better approaches, to drive innovation and to deliver better policy. And it's why forums such as this is so important to build trust and understanding between governments and business, who share a vital role in driving connectivity and sustainable and inclusive development in the region. Thank you.